My 29F boyfriend, 29M, of 2.5 years ended things after saying he just couldn't see us getting married. Am I in denial that he'll one day come back after seeing how much pain I took him in? I am aware that the title may make me appear desperate and pitiful, so please be gentle with me. I'm not typically the naive, wishful girl following a breakup. My boyfriend and I were together for 2.5 years and shared a home for the past 6 months. People who interacted with us as a couple often commented on the love we had for each other and expressed how heartwarming it was that we found one another. I genuinely believed he was my life partner and felt tremendously loved, so I assumed he had similar future plans for us. For context, he ended our relationship roughly a year ago due to my struggles with anger and jealousy when drinking. After about a week apart, he confessed that he could not bear to be without me. We reconciled, and I devoted myself to therapy. After a considerable amount of hard work and commitment to personal growth, my anger while drinking ceased to be an issue, which led us to move in together. Since then, we have been incredibly happy, and I thought I was in love. We had discussed the possibility of having children someday. Both of us desired a large family, and he would often express how wonderful it would be to have children together. A couple of months ago, we spent a weekend away with my family, where he became tipsy and emotional, saying we should start having children now because he was thrilled about the prospect of having little ones on vacation with us. A month ago, he took me on a tropical getaway for my birthday. Given how long we had been together, friends and family began to question if he intended to propose. A friend messaged me while I was sitting next to him, asking if I thought he would pop the question during our trip. He told me firmly that he was not planning to propose and that this trip was solely for my birthday. He was not rude. He simply wanted to prevent me from having expectations that might lead to disappointment. A few days after that conversation, I inquired about his thoughts on marriage and whether he saw it in our near future. I clarified that I was not trying to pressure him and did not need an engagement right away. I merely wanted to communicate openly about our relationship and ensure we were on the same page. He replied that he felt we still had some communication issues to address as a couple and did not foresee it happening soon, but he mentioned that he envisioned marrying me one day. Fast forward to this week. He had a day where he appeared irritable about everything. He was short-tempered and argumentative, prompting me to ask what was bothering him. He finally opened up. He shared that he was not feeling happy and could not shake the worry that he couldn't see us getting married, feeling that we didn't have a long-term future, and it consumed his thoughts. He expressed that he feared divorce would be inevitable if we married, leaving me utterly stunned. I broke down and have been in a state of emotional turmoil ever since. The next day, which was Valentine's Day, he attempted to act as if our serious conversation had never occurred. He was evasive and avoided addressing the issue, and I could not bring myself to raise it on that particular day. He dropped this emotional bomb and then tried to pretend it wasn't devastating me. The following day, I finally asked what was happening, as I felt confused and lost regarding our relationship. He cried, telling me he loved me immensely, wanted me to be the one, but could not shake the belief that we wouldn't last if we married. He mentioned how we had attended several weddings together, trying to picture us in that scenario, but failing to do so. This shattered me because I realized that at every wedding we attended, I had looked forward to experiencing that moment with him. I asked whether he was sharing this because he wanted us to work through it, or if he felt we should end things. Unfortunately, it was the latter. I am truly heartbroken. I believed the happiest chapter of my life was just beginning, and now it feels as though it has been taken from me without warning. Today, I moved out. I went to the house we shared, his house, and packed all my belongings with the assistance of family and friends. I cried intermittently while packing. I haven't eaten since the breakup because I am so devastated that I feel completely lost and hopeless. Once my family and friends departed after helping with my move, he asked if I had eaten, inquired about my living arrangements, and expressed his desire to ensure that I felt safe and comfortable. I told him that it was no longer his responsibility. He expressed that he didn't want me to resent him. I informed him I was angry about the situation but did not hate him, acknowledging that if this was how he truly felt, he had made the right choice. During the remainder of our time sorting through belongings, he wept and repeatedly apologized, stating he did not want me to leave but understood it was the right decision. He embraced me, kissed my forehead, and we shared tears while also discarding our love notes and past anniversary cards. Everything felt so confusing. Nevertheless, I just wanted to be comforted by the man I loved, the man I thought I would be marrying until just a few days ago. I ultimately shared with him that while this might sound pathetic, a part of me struggles to believe him. I questioned whether he genuinely could not envision a future with me. I suspect he has commitment issues, which might have caused him to panic and end things with any girl in my position. I admitted that I was unsure if I was in denial, which contributed to my feelings. I also told him that based on everything he had said regarding marriage and children, he was either an incredibly convincing liar who hadn't wanted to express his true feelings, or he actually did envision a future with me, but was now sabotaging it in his mind because he feared things would not unfold as he hoped. For the remainder of our time together, we both cried while packing. He repeatedly expressed his sorrow and care for me, believing this was the best course of action. At times, he appeared more distressed than I was. There were moments when I comforted him while he cried uncontrollably. After going back and forth about our feelings, shedding tears, embracing, and offering each other comfort, I finished packing, and it was time to leave. We hugged, sobbed, and expressed how much we would miss one another. He followed me to my car after our goodbye, as if he couldn't let me go, and pulled me into a tight embrace while I was seated in the driver's seat. We cried helplessly until we had to break the embrace and part ways. It was painfully brutal, and I have never felt more despondent and empty in my life. I was unaware I could feel this deeply or experience such profound pain from a breakup. After enduring all this heartache, I cannot stop thinking that perhaps in the future we will find our way back to each other. I struggle to comprehend how a breakup could be so hard for both of us, and yet we are not meant to be together. However, I recognize that I may just be in denial. I am uncertain what to think. My friends and family appreciate my boyfriend, or rather, my ex-boyfriend. However, they have all pointed out that he has now ended our relationship twice, and this time he expressed sentiments that he cannot take back, even if he were to change his mind. Logically, I understand that if he attempted to return, rebuilding trust would be a monumental challenge, requiring significant time. I also realize that if he feels this way now, it may not be long before similar feelings resurface in the future. Yet, I genuinely believe he is my soulmate and the person I should be living my life with. The depth of his love for me, even in the midst of our breakup, makes it difficult for me to accept any alternative. I recognize that even if he were to come back, our relationship might be irreparably damaged due to this breakup. Logically, I understand I should focus on moving forward. Nevertheless, he is an extraordinary man, an exceptional person and partner. At this moment, I find it impossible to envision my future without him or being happy with someone else. I just need to hear from strangers whether my mind and heart are leading me astray by allowing me to remain in this state of denial, or if there is hope that this man I love so deeply is simply going through something that he needs to resolve on his own. Story 2. I don't know what to do, but I feel such heartache and a gut-wrenching feeling all the time about this. In April of the previous year, I encountered a guy with whom I fell deeply in love in every possible way. We had a few light flirting exchanges the year prior, so I had a sense that he was interested in me, but nothing ever materialized. In April 2024, he added me on Snapchat. He began flirting with me, and we played Fortnite together while chatting until 2 a.m. We discovered we had much in common: the same church, homeschooling for the semester, shared interests, and our connection blossomed beautifully. He was quite shy, but he was charming, and I found myself falling for him almost immediately. We ended up in a rather lengthy debate over who would hang up the call, but eventually we drifted off to sleep. I gave him my phone number, and the following morning, we both woke up at precisely the same time, and he sent me a text. We chatted for several weeks, and it was absolutely amazing. I invested a lot of effort into our relationship, and our love flourished. He even told me he envisioned marrying me one day. I set his picture as my wallpaper, and I convinced my mom to drive by his house so he could see me. He often complimented my beauty, and he seemed in awe when I drove past his home, and I felt the same way. However, sometimes it felt like a cruel joke, as everything felt so perfect. I wondered why it was happening to me, you know? That Sunday, I saw him at church, and when I said hello, he walked right past me. I chose not to pursue him, but he later apologized, saying he had gotten nervous and wished I had followed him. From that day until Tuesday, his behavior turned increasingly sexual. He expressed his desire to be intimate with me at church, complimenting me on how attractive I looked in my dress. It was overwhelming because, despite being deeply in love, his approach changed and became less affectionate. He frequently used terms like sexy or hot rather than beautiful, which made me feel undervalued. After we had engaged in intimate conversations over the phone, I gently reminded him that my love for him encompassed much more than just physical attraction. We often reconnected in sweeter ways afterward, so I assumed he would also be more loving, but he simply replied, "You too." We started to engage in sexual activities quite a bit. He encouraged me to initiate so he wouldn't feel guilty, and I obliged, wanting nothing more than for him to be happy and love me in return. On Monday night, he was genuinely sweet, mentioning that the following day, when he met my aunt, he would confess how deeply in love he was with me. The next day, I drove to his house, and he suggested we stand close enough for my aunt not to see while he fondled me. I was uncomfortable with this idea and chose not to comply. He was kind to my aunt, and we shared a significant amount of flirty glances and hugs, which felt wonderful. However, on the last hug, he grabbed my backside, and afterward I departed. The rest of the day, his conversations turned incredibly sexual. He was eager to rush me home to show him things. He requested I skip practice that evening to come over and be intimate, but I declined. He had previously mentioned playing Fortnite with another girl, and I jokingly told him, "You better not," since I thought he was teasing me. I didn't genuinely mind. He could have friends and I trusted him, even though we hadn't made our relationship official yet. However, he never responded to my "I love you" before practice, and when I returned, his demeanor was distant. Eventually, he ended things with me, explaining that he had spoken to his parents, who felt he wasn't ready for a relationship. He assured me he loved me deeply and always would, expressing regret if the timing had been different. Things could have worked out wonderfully. I simply replied, "Oh, okay," but remained understanding and supportive. That very night, we played Fortnite together again. He mentioned that just because we were no longer a couple, it didn't mean we couldn't be sexual, so as you might guess, we turned into friends with benefits for a month. Did I want this arrangement? Not at all. Did I love him? More than anything else. He became upset because I reached out to my ex, something he discovered from my story, and since I hadn't communicated with him all weekend, it was because he often seemed withdrawn and uninterested unless we were being intimate. He probably thought I was moving on, but I wasn't. He was furious with me but failed to articulate why, simply stating he was annoyed that I hadn't texted back. I apologized, explaining his demeanor felt cold, and he vehemently insisted that he always wanted to talk to me, leading to sexual conversations that night. Yet, shortly after, he reverted back to being distant. That Monday, we talked all day, but later he expressed annoyance and mentioned he was unwell and frustrated with me. I then composed a long apology, addressing everything I could think of, but he merely responded with, "K." His meanness continued, so I ceased communication. I tried reaching out one day, but he remained cold, advising me to talk to my ex, delivering hurtful comments. That evening, I continued to apologize, expressing my care, and stated that if we were going to be friends, we needed to communicate. He retorted that we weren't anything, and he had no desire to communicate, leading us to say our goodbyes. He called me that night while high, mistakenly thinking I was someone else, and while dismissive, he implied I was bothersome. Eventually, he did call back, showing some kindness, albeit still sexual in nature, while I remained emotionally distant due to feeling hurt. Then, he blocked me, seemingly wanting me to chase after him. However, I chose not to. He later returned, claiming he had intended to block someone else, apologizing profusely, and then used me again that same night. In June, he briefly joined my Fortnite party. In July, he invited me to another Fortnite session. He informed me of being grounded, unable to text me, and claimed he was in significant trouble. He expressed genuine remorse over everything and professed his love, saying, "Good night, I love you" on the first night we communicated again. I replied, "Then act like it." He promised to talk to me at church the next morning but failed to do so. He later explained he had a rough morning because his friend had been hit by a truck, so I extended kindness. I was engaged with another guy, but was considering terminating that relationship due to our unusual age difference, unsure my mom would approve. That guy was also unkind, but I didn't miss him. I only aimed to be a supportive friend during his difficult time. Though he was flirty, I downplayed his advances as I recognized he wasn't prepared for anything serious. Tragically, his friend passed away a few days later, and we played Fortnite shortly after. While on the microphone, he overheard the guy I was previously communicating with. He was infuriated, even labeling him my side piece, demanding to know, "Who's your boyfriend?" I clarified. "He's not. We can't be together because of the age gap." I officially ended things that night with that guy, feeling it was the right decision. He continued to make comments about the situation, but when my Xbox turned off, our communication ceased entirely since that day. This was genuinely unfair, as he had walked away first, and if he genuinely desired us to reconnect, he needed to put in the effort. I comprehended he wasn't ready due to the loss of his friend, yet I assured him I would always be there if he needed support. I prayed he recognized that. In August, I texted him a happy birthday, but he responded in a dry manner, claiming he didn't have my number saved. Then, in November, he called me out of the blue, and when I answered, I exclaimed, "Hello?" He asked if my mom and I had acquired that house near him, and I replied, "Oh no, we didn't, we're still here." He said, "Oh, okay," leading to an awkward silence. Finally, he remarked, "Well, that's all I was wondering. Goodbye," and I replied goodbye, noting he seemed nervous. Despite this, he was polite and calm. Whenever I see him at church, he stares at me, though he seldom attends anymore. That's the entirety of the story. Story 3. Aita for asking him if he thought of me while sleeping with his ex. Trigger warning. Mentions of drugs, alcohol, sexual assault. This account is used anonymously. I am an 18-year-old female and a freshman in college. I began talking to a 19-year-old male around October. We connected quite well, and we had numerous mutual friends who had a positive opinion of him. His ex-girlfriend is a year older and coincidentally attends the same college as we do. He told me he ended the relationship because she cheated on him with one of his teammates who is also a mutual friend of ours. This detail is significant for later in the story. When we first started communicating in October, I befriended a girl named Haley, who is also 18. She was acquainted with his ex and informed me that their breakup was due to an argument regarding his smoking habits, not because of infidelity. I was doubtful and inquired about her source. She said the ex confided in her, so I decided to let it go at that. A week later, Haley, the ex, and the guy I was communicating with approached me, questioning why I was speaking negatively about the ex. I was thoroughly perplexed and asked what I supposedly said. The ex claimed that someone close to me had said I called her crazy. I simply stared at her before laughing and remarked that if she believed someone labeling her as crazy warranted a team effort to confront and accuse me, then she should consider seeking therapy. I walked away, and later on, the guy apologized, suggesting that someone must have misled her. We went on several dates afterward, and everything seemed fine until a day before our fall break when I found out Haley had been the one who said I called the ex crazy. I contemplated cutting her off then, but I decided to wait and do it in person. Then anonymous accounts were created to contact the guy. He informed me, and I simply shrugged and told him to block them. They continued to direct message him. By this point, there was little we could do, so we decided to ignore them. We went on one more date, and during that outing, I realized our lifestyles were vastly different. I prefer to stay at home, read, watch movies and shows, and perhaps attend 1 or 2 social gatherings a month. He enjoys partying, smoking, and working out, what I view as typical manly activities. My intention was to gradually distance myself from the relationship, but he completely ghosted me. In December, we were both invited to a friend's birthday celebration. A week prior, I started feeling ill and posted about it. The guy responded to my story, urging me to attend. I told him I wasn't feeling well, and he insisted he absolutely needed me there. That was when I officially decided to sever ties with him, so I left him on read to give him time to ponder how I could let him down gently. A day before winter break and after exams, I concluded that it would also be beneficial for me to cut ties with Haley. I sent her a message calmly explaining that I was displeased with her going behind my back and accusing me, and I required people in my life who wouldn't engage in such behavior. This turned out to be a terrible decision, as Haley retaliated by calling me a horrible person and claiming that I was involved with a rapist. I was taken aback, unsure how to reply, and since I had already decided to stop communicating with the guy, I just left her messages unread. She then bombarded me with texts for the next 2 days, berating me and insisting I needed to get my life together. I turned off my phone and began packing for my trip to my home state. Nothing significant occurred over the break. It was just smiles and time spent with friends and family. Upon returning, life continued normally for the next few weeks. That is, until the friend's birthday party. The guy did not attend, but mutual friends were present, and I overheard them discussing how the guy might have gotten his ex-girlfriend pregnant. I hurried to tell my friend, and we laughed about how I had dodged a bullet. However, mutual friends then approached us and inquired if the guy had been good in bed. To clarify, the guy and I had never been intimate, and I am a virgin. I questioned what they were talking about, and they revealed that he had been bragging about having slept with me in my car. This gave me a peculiar sense of power, which I exploited by claiming he was terrible and that he was lacking in size. They laughed, saying his ex didn't think so since they had been involved throughout the entire time he was dating me. I was quite upset by this, so I went home to sleep it off. The following day, I awoke to find 20 messages from the guy asking why I lied about sleeping with him and about his size, which, in all honesty, was likely not a fabrication. I ignored his texts and proceeded with the rest of my weekend. On Monday, after returning to campus, the ex confronted me. She was angry and I was confused. She began yelling, and I still couldn't understand what was happening. It turns out that before the party, the guy and his ex had been intimate once more, but he inadvertently uttered my name, which infuriated the ex and led her to believe we had been together. She had informed mutual friends of the incident, and they shared it with me. Consequently, those mutual friends told her that I suggested she must not have been good in bed. This was far too much drama for me, so I asked her to message me after my class so we could resolve the issue. We exchanged Instagram handles, and after class, I explained the entire situation, clarifying that we had never been intimate, but I was aware she was seeing him. Now she was frustrated with her friends and with the guy. I tried to empathize with her and inquired if he had truly assaulted her. She stated that she couldn't recall, and as I attempted to provide comfort, she expressed that she didn't want it. I decided to leave it there. Weeks passed, and on Valentine's Day, the guy was sitting outside my car. I was visibly irritated and asked what he wanted. He attempted to apologize and provide me with the full story. According to him, they did break up due to her infidelity, but also because they had used substances together and ended up being intimate, which upset her because she was uncertain if he had used protection. Spoiler alert, he did. Nonetheless, she ghosted him and started dating another guy. They officially ended their relationship after that. This occurred when she was a senior and he was a junior in high school. Fast forward to them both attending the same college as I did, where our paths crossed. The guy and I hit it off. Then Haley entered the picture, and the complications began. It appears that both Haley and his ex developed those anonymous accounts to try to pull him back to her side, which succeeded since they resumed their physical relationship following those account incidents. The birthday party situation then unfolded, and it emerged that the guy was attempting to seduce me before breaking things off with me to continue his involvement with his ex. He tried to justify his actions by saying he wasn't in a good mental state, which, while perhaps true, still doesn't excuse using me. After they slept together again, he accidentally moaned my name, which enraged the ex. When pressed about it, he claimed he had slept with me in my car, and this false information somehow spread among his friends. He tried to apologize, but I was having none of it. When he realized this, he insisted that I owed him an apology. I got into my car and asked him if I was on his mind the entire time he was with her or only after he realized I wouldn't be intimate with him. Both were angry. The ex accused me of slut-shaming her and threatened to report me to the administration, while the guy called me a terrible person for leading him on. Is this what dating has become? Am I out of touch with reality? Am I in the wrong despite their blatant lies? I could use some assistance. Am I the antagonist in this situation? Story 4. Aita for getting mad at my daughter and scolding her for accidentally embarrassing me last month. I understand this is a lengthy narrative, and I apologize if any sections are unclear, but I request that you read the entire account regardless, as I seek assistance and encouragement. Last month, my son, 22 years old, visited me, 41 years old, my husband, 47 years old, and my daughter, 15 years old, from his usual residence. In the evening, my son was in his room on speakerphone with his friends, and I cautioned my daughter not to say anything inappropriate, as she tends to make odd and unacceptable remarks out of the blue, which I concede I've struggled to control. My daughter then went to the bathroom, and it seems she forgot my warning because she emerged and asked me if I was on my menstrual cycle. I gestured for her to be quiet, but she began apologizing loudly, which really stressed me out since my shushing her and her loud apologies could be perceived as abusive by my son's friends. She returned to the bathroom, and I heard the bathtub and sink running at full blast, despite my previous instructions against it. She turned on the water because she likes to drown out noise. Frustrated by her embarrassment, I entered the bathroom to ask why the water was so high, and she apologized and reduced the flow. I told her there was no justification for her behavior and that it was becoming annoying. As she continued to apologize, I replied curtly with "okay" and exited the room. She remained in the bathroom for some time without the water running, but I needed to use the bathroom, so I knocked on the door, and she hurried to her room. After using the bathroom, about 10 minutes later, I returned to her room to apply band-aids and lotion to her hands. My daughter has suffered from severe eczema since childhood and frequently scratches it because it itches. I remind her not to scratch and to apply lotion, but she ignores me. She never uses lotion and continues to scratch, causing her teachers to apply lotion to her hands and advise her to use it as they are worried about her condition. This situation wouldn't exist if she would simply follow my instructions and not scratch, but she refuses. Although I require her to apply lotion in the morning before school, she must keep up with it whenever her hands start to itch. Upon entering her room, I noticed she was obviously upset, having been crying. She lied to me, claiming her red face was due to allergies, but I knew the truth. Despite my irritation, I sat down with the lotion and band-aids to attend to her hands. I noticed a new scar from her scratching, and I scolded her for it, making it clear that it was unacceptable. I reiterated that teachers were applying lotion to her hands because they care, and that it appears as though I am neglecting her. At this point, she was visibly shaken, which only added to my irritation. I addressed her prior actions and how she had run to her room crying to elicit my guilt, but she again insisted it was allergies, which I challenged. She responded in a stressed tone that she had been quietly crying in her room and was not attempting to make me feel guilty. There have been several instances where she has yelled at me and had significant outbursts, so I told her to calm down, warning her that she was about to make serious mistakes for herself. I continued to express my irritation about her actions that evening, and she kept apologizing, which only aggravated me further. I instructed her to stop apologizing, explaining that she was behaving as if I was being excessively harsh with her. I continued to reprimand her about her hands and mentioned her putting water in her gloves to soothe her hands, which had a foul odor, and how she thought that was acceptable. She then retorted, "You always tell me to let go of things. You need to learn to let go too. You're a hypocrite." I responded firmly, instructing her to mind her language and asserting that she would not be going to Disney World, especially since we had plans to go soon, and made it clear that she could not address me in that manner. She replied that she didn't want to go to Disney World, and in a moment of anger, I said I didn't want to go either, suggesting that her father and I could go without her and that she could stay with her grandmother. As I continued to express my frustration about her actions, I noticed she was trembling, so I ordered her to stop shaking, explaining that nothing serious had occurred for her to be so upset. I initially thought she was angry with me, but in retrospect, I believe she was more frightened. I continued to voice my irritation about her behavior and eventually left her room. After some time, I began to regret my earlier responses, so I returned to apologize. I expressed my remorse for losing my temper and suggested we move on from the incident. I reaffirmed my desire to visit Disney World and for her to join us. The name I used is not her real name. She forgave me, and after falling asleep, she awoke hours later. I still felt guilt, so when she came out of her room, I asked, "Emma, can we please forget about last night?" and apologized again. A few minutes later, as I sat in her room, I tried to lighten the mood by saying, "Let's be happy," and reminded her of our upcoming trip to Disney World. Later, when she returned home from school and I was resting on the couch while she sat beside me, I suddenly recalled the previous night and said, "I am truly sorry for how I acted last night." She responded that it was okay. I am writing this a month later because I have been reflecting on it and feeling guilty. I am uncertain if my reaction was justified, given her failure to listen to my instruction about the water, and whether I should have handled it differently. My daughter is frequently moody and irritable, crying and shouting over the slightest issue. Recently, she has made a fuss about treating her hands with lotion and band-aids, even soaking them, insisting that she needs her personal time. I have become increasingly frustrated with her behavior and her complaints over trivial matters, so I have been trying to enforce boundaries. Now, I am questioning whether my approach was warranted and if my words were necessary, or if I overreacted. She must learn how to manage her frustration better and pay attention to my guidance when I instruct her. Reddit, am I the antagonist for becoming angry with my daughter and reprimanding her for unintentionally embarrassing me last month?